It's never been about like shifting because I quote unquote wasn't happy. It's been a shift because either market environments or conditions helped me recognize the signals that I wasn't going to bring my best self to what I was doing, or something was going to de-energize me. So then I was like, well, how do I leverage my relationships? How do I leverage my experiences? How do I potentially create new and interesting work that keeps me on mission, which is living by example and designing this life that I don't want to escape from, where I have that agency, that autonomy, that flexibility, and that purpose. It's not about it being perfect. It's never perfect, but when it's purposeful, that's why you get up.
Let's impact some today. I think we're gonna do a great job. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Modern Man Podcast, where we are here to connect men in pursuit of their potential. Now, before we jump in, I first want to ask you that you join us as we embrace discomfort, cultivate community, and put wind in each other's sails. Now, we do that by first you hitting the like button, hit that subscribe button to get a new episode each and every single week, and share this with someone else that you know can get value from the podcast as well. For the men that are watching, I encourage you to check out the Noble Knights Men's Group, where you will find the support, accountability, and the mentorship you need to achieve your goals. Join us and become a part of a community of like-minded men on a mission to elevate their capacity for life. And we are getting wind in our sails today from my guest. I'm excited. He is a powerhouse strategist, speaker, systems thinker, and author behind LifeWork Design and LifeWork Revolution. Born in the South Bronx and now serving as Global Director of Future of Work and Skills-Based Organization Strategy at Merck, he transformed Fortune 100 companies, tech startups, and impact organizations. It is a pleasure to have Kason Morris on the podcast today. Kason, good to have you, brother.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm appreciative to be here on this podcast and just to have this conversation. So I thank you for holding space.
Absolutely. And I appreciate you being in the space. And I always start the conversation by giving the audience a chance to meet the guest firsthand. So my question is always like this in terms of you walk into a room with people who don't know you or what you do. How do you introduce yourself, Kason?
It's interesting. In the season that I'm in right now, pretty much I kind of say like, hey, most people chase titles. And I'm about helping people chase currency, the kind that actually helps them in what they're doing right now. So I'm all about skills, story, and strategy. And I want to know your strategy, and I want to know your story. And then I share mine, and then they share it back. And it's a really good icebreaker because they get really curious about me and what I'm doing, and I get to learn a little bit more about them.
See, that now I'm going to jump down the rabbit hole of all of those three because I think that is actually really fascinating and an interesting way to identify somebody, because a creative question I've asked for someone is like, hey, tell me about yourself, but you can't tell me what you do. And you get a pause, and then you realize that person gets in a panic because that's how they're used to explaining themselves. So when you say skills, story, and strategy, I'm curious. Let's break down. The first one you said was strategy. What does a strategy look like if someone were to answer that? What is the strategy of Kason?
Yeah, it's a great question because when I think about the idea, and you made such a great point, most people define themselves by the work that they do. They put themselves in a box. And when I think of strategy, the whole point I even talk about life work design, or even in my book Life Work Revolution, is that your strategy should really be driven by who you are as a person. And then the things that define you, your work and other things, those are all tools in that. So to me, the strategy is you first. What is your life about? And one of the things that I tend to lead in when people start to ask me is, I have the greatest job in the world that I will never vacation from and never retire from. And that's being a father to 4 beautiful daughters before anything else.
Yeah.
And this is the role that has taught me more about leadership, negotiation, and legacy than anything I've ever done in like corporate, and I bring that same energy to help people design and think about how they define themselves and their strategy when they talk about who they are.
Man, when you say negotiation, when you talking about a 2-year-old, the negotiation tactics is needed.
Yeah, and look, my squad runs the gamut. My oldest is 16, and my little is 4, and then I have two in the middle that are 11 and 9. So it's a straight sitcom, but I wouldn't have it any other way.
I love that, man. And when we talk about story, from strategy to story, what does the story look like?
I mean, when you think about story, right? Um, I mean, there are a couple places like the fact that you introduced the fact that I'm from the Bronx and I grew up in the Bronx in 80s and 90s, and by default is real, and systems where I grew up with, they weren't really set up for your success, So with that being said, I always had this idea, even from childhood, that I had to start to think about my own blueprints, and I had to start to design systems that fit who I was, even before I knew what to call this.
Mm,
And that applied to work, to life, and to relationships. And when I think about like my real origin spark in recent years, it's happened for me around when I had my second daughter. I started thinking about like I did all the things that everyone tells you to do. You climb the corporate ladder, you get the promotions, you get the bag, and I fell into this trap, which I call the relentless climb, because I was trying to achieve these things to define who I was. And then once I had my second daughter, I realized, like, I was like, hey, this isn't I can't just build a career for my family. I have to build a system for freedom. And by freedom, that means that I have agency and autonomy and the ability to prioritize my time where I want to.
mm.
And that's what really drove me to start thinking about my skills as currency and in my story as leverage, and how could I use those things to start to design experiences. So it wasn't about looking for the next opportunity or the next job. It was about actually building it and using these ideas around design thinking and systems thinking to craft my story and to experiment. And that, ever since I did that, I've always had energy under what I do, and it's what I teach other professionals, because when you make that mindset shift, there's no such thing as a bad opportunity.
Yeah,
It's just more about what can you shape from it.
man. I can tell you, I resonate with that wholeheartedly, especially when you look at, and I'll even pull up the research study because we're kind of harping on it right now. It was a Gallup study, and a Gallup study found that 85% of professionals have experienced burnout, and a
Mm,
career change or reinvention is a key to recovery. It's a key recovering driver. And a lot of the guys listening, they have reached the success. They followed the corporate ladder, they climbed that corporate ladder, and now they've gotten to this point where they look around and they say, "Man, I make a lot of money." But we've heard that adage of, "I make a lot of money to pay a mortgage for a house that I barely live in, sending my
yeah.
kids to school that I barely get to see, and I don't get to raise while my wife was working another job, and then we maybe have an hour at dinner time." And if I could be honest and transparent with you and the audience, I'm in a bit of that struggle and misalignment myself, right?
Yeah.
Love what I do. I enjoy what I do. However, I also know I have to be there at a certain time for a certain amount of time on certain days when they say. And sometimes I don't feel like it. It's not that I'm being lazy. It's just, yeah, I would rather be with my daughter. I would rather be with my wife, not go to bed early and stay up late and watch whatever show we're watching on Netflix, right? And then I could see that I am not now I'm not just trading time for money. I'm trading autonomy
Mm,
for position. And I love how this evolved from strategy to story. And you mentioned the skills and a lot of what you talk about with like life work design. I'm curious as to how do we identify the skills, or you could use yourself as an example or a parallel here
yeah.
of transitioning into the skills to find and obtain that opportunity for a work life design or life work design.
Yeah, yeah, and let me unpack that. I mean, I think that's a great segue, and just to tell you how intentional I am about this whole idea, because what most people kind of say is like we look for work life balance, right? That's what you
Hmm.
like. If you go Google search, that's what you see. It's all about work life balance. But when you really break down the word, it's a setup for failure, and I'll explain why. Because first of all, you have work life. So what does that do? That locks you into thinking about your work as a function of life. And that's why immediately what I did is I flipped it. I'm like, no, it should be what are you trying to do in your life? And then how does work start to become a tool and an enabler of that? So that's the
Mm,
first unlock. It's like getting people to kind of switch that narrative. And then when you think about balance, right? Balance in work and life is a false dichotomy because these things will never be equal. Because when you think about the term balance, it's about trying to get things on level, and that's not reality. Like no matter how hard you push, no matter all the things you do, whether you are an entrepreneur or an employee or a family person, so then I shift that to more of thinking about things like in relation to alignment and synergy, and like the season. So I go from work life balance to this idea of life work synergy, where like
mm,
work isn't the enemy of your life. It should be a tool that funds and fuels it. So now work becomes that investor in that logic. That to me, when I work with our peers, is that's what I start to think about, and then that ties into this whole idea of your skills as your strategic currency, because here the reality that we're in today, titles fade. You are more than a title, but skills that are transferable are the ones that you can cash out in any market. And I talk about this in frameworks that I share. It isn't all just about transferable skills, but even when you look at the most recent reports from World Economic Forum, publishings from Deloitte and McKinsey, and the trends over the last couple of years, yes, AI literacy matters, and it's really really important. What people are hiring for are very core human centered skills. So we're in a world where we're going into enabling technology, and technology is going to take over a lot of our tasks. But the thing that recruiters and talent and people are going to look for, are they going to look for your ability to communicate? They're going to look
mhm.
for your ability to connect. They're going to look for curiosity. They're going to look for courage. And these are all things that a bot will never be able to replicate, even though there's some things that they're catching up with. But I encourage everybody, like, think about how these tools as partners to you so you can be more deeply human and differentiate yourself in that way. And that's what it's all about. It's like you take those two components, like you flip work life to life work, and then you
Yeah.
start thinking about what skills that you have that are transferable and highly and uniquely human, and then you take that and you share it through your stories. So your story is not about your title. Again, it's about who you are. It's about your, in my case, my fatherhood, my pivots, my legacy, and the obstacles along the way. And that's how you get followers, and that's how you get fans and supporters that speak in rooms that you're not in, and advocates, and that's how you get more energy to like fuel what you do no matter how hard you work.
Man, I love that, and one follow up into that would be you referenced AI a little bit, and I feel like as though I'm missing that glaring ball that's ready to be spiked down. But for anyone that's listening who identifies their skills, let's say they're an engineer, they're a developer, they're a coder, and they feel that their skills are highly technical in the sense that
Yep.
AI is knocking on their doorstep.
Yep.
Um, what words of encouragement would you give them in terms of their skill set and how AI was more of a partner than an adversary in that regard?
Yeah. Yep. No, 100%. And I think this applies to everyone. And I think the wake up call for white collar workers in this AI age of work is that there were some tasks that you felt like, hey, I'm highly specialized, I'm highly technical, this kind of secures me, and it really doesn't. What it's doing, what AI is doing, is it's taking over a lot of lower order tasks, a lot of data processing, a lot of those kinds of things. And what companies are looking for now going forward is what I call the AI advantage professional, the super worker, the person that knows how to partner with these tools to do more human things and make decisions. And we said this earlier in our pre-chat. The whole point that I made is that like AI will not replace you, but the people that know how to leverage it will.
Hmm.
And the other thing I would leave for anyone, like even when you look at engineers and you look at that tech space as an example, like yeah, it's hard. It's a harder point of entry now because now you have bots and agents that can do entry level like tech tasks. But now if you're someone graduating out of college, you got to think of more about not so much what degree I have, but how can I demonstrate my skills. We're in this very unique time where you can create your own platform. Instead of resumes, it's more about your portfolio. And there's so many different ways that you can evidence your ability to do work and your ability to help drive innovations. And I think that's the way to go. And the last thing I'll say on this point is I implore people to stop thinking about skills as hard and soft, or as technical and non-technical. And I say start to think about skills as whether or not they're durable or perishable.
Ooh.
And that's a really, really important distinction for where we are in this age right now. And the easiest analogy is think of durable skills like a toolbox. You got a hammer, nails, drill, right? You can build a bed, you can build a wall. You can always come back to those tools time and time again for certain things. Think about perishable skills like groceries. Like, yeah, you need them and you got to eat. But guess what? If you have those skills in the fridge too long, you leave them outside of the fridge, they're gonna spoil. So it's a
Mm.
mix of like your tools and your groceries, and you got to kind of understand where are you investing your time. So ideally, the better you get at looking at what skills are rare, valuable, and durable, and how they fit in your stack as you audit yourself for whatever it is you do now and what you want to do next, then that's where I would double down. Because that kind of keeps you future proof and future ready.
What are some of those examples of a skill that would be durable, valuable, and forgot the third one?
I would say, yeah, it's I'd say I think what I said was that it was like that it's rare and
Yes.
valuable, and then it has like some durability, meaning it stands the test of time. I think one of the more important ones, if I could just pick one, I'll say two, because it ties to it, is adaptability.
Yeah.
Like adaptability, and this is not about resilience or grit, but the reason why adaptability is such an important skill to hone in on is because in this modern era of work and life, things are changing faster than our human brains have the capacity to actually learn and understand. So when you think about prior eras and prior revolutions like the industrial era, the Renaissance, you know, humans had centuries and decades to normalize certain things. We're now in an era where AI is moving so fast that as humans, we really can't handle it. So the more we develop our skills around adaptability, and part of that is, and this is my second honorable mention, is being able to build like a learning mindset. So learning dexterity. So it's not about the ability to know it all. It's about how fast can you adapt and how fast can you pick up a new thing before it becomes obsolete. Those are going to be
Hmm.
two like critical differentiating skills. And if we double down on like how to build that muscle for ourselves, we'll be good.
I love that, and it's really, my wife would call me an early adopter because there's oftentimes you see these things, and by the time you adopt it, you missed it. It's here and it's
100%.
gone, and you can get left behind. Now, it's also worth noting not everything's worth adopting because there are, like, NFTs. Great that you could have adopted that.
Right.
Now the technology is still sound. Understanding it is important, but going all in can kind of become shiny object syndrome. You don't necessarily want to do that. But with that thought
A
process in
hun-
mind, oh, go ahead. I don't know if I hit something that you want to unpack more.
No, 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 no. I think your point reinforced what I was talking about. Like when you audit yourself and you think about like what's durable versus perishable, like it locks into that because it's like every things are gonna sound good, but you got to reflect on yourself and say, hey, like NFT is a perfect example of what I would call a perishable kind of opportunity because it was valuable and people were interested, but it didn't really last a long time. You
Mhm.
know, like these things, like it kind of just came in and came out. So you got to really start to take a step back and think about like even if you look at your prior history and even if you look at like your experiences, and I work people through this, you start to audit things and you see patterns. You're like, yo, this skill transfer from here to here, or I got deep in this skill and then this one kind of went away. And then I'll add honorable mention to the point of like um, unlearning is also another important skill. So I said one, but I gave you three. It's adaptability, it's dexterity and how you learn and having a learning mindset, but it's also unlearning because you got to let some stuff go because sometimes it holds you back. And once you if you don't recognize that, you have to move on from a thing.
Amen to that, brother. I'm still working on that unlearning thing. Uh, what does alignment beats achievement look like in like daily life, career strategy? When you say alignment beats achievement, what are you hoping folks take away from that? If iron sharpens iron, so does one man sharpen another. But if you're a man and you're alone or listening to this, then who sharpens you? What's going on, guys? Ted Phaeton here, host of the Modern Man podcast, also founder of the Noble Knights Mastermind Group. And I'm just out here encouraging you to find your circle. Maybe you're on a personal growth journey and nobody around you understands the new mentality that you're possessing. That's okay. You can find an online community that will pour into you, will navigate your goals and navigate your obstacles, share their experiences, resources, and more. Join the Noble Knights Mastermind Group and try us out for free to tap into a community of men helping each other scale up and reach their goals. Check out themodernmanpodcast.com.
Yeah, I mean when I think about that whole idea for me, it's about like where's your energy? You know, it's about thinking about what's your mix of things that actually keep you going day in and day out. There are three things that generally people kind of go after is some sense of money, some sense of meaning, or some sense of expression. So I think of it almost like a mixing board, like a DJ. Like what's your levels right now? You know, and so when I talk about alignment, depending on the season you're in, it could be a grind season, it could be a family season. You just got to make sure that your levels are aligned because that's what's going to help you show up day in, day out. Sometimes, like you said earlier, you know, when we get in that relentless climb and we get that chase, we go get the bag, we go get the titles. We think the title is a sense of security. And once you achieve it, you can then recognize like, wait, I'm out of alignment because I got the title and I thought it meant something, but it really didn't. So what is really the thing that aligns to you? What may align to you might be having more flexibility to work from home. What may align for you might be the ability in your work to be able to travel and see new places. So you got to think about the levers in your life that give you purpose, that give you meaning, that give you value. It's like, how can I integrate these things into my routines, whether it's in my work or whether it's outside of my work? And if you're not aligned, you got to audit yourself. And I encourage doing an audit at least every 6 months. And I think about it almost like a check engine light on a car, you know? And it's a
Yeah.
really super easy thing to do. It's like you just take a bunch of like maybe 4 or 5 categories that mean something to you and just take a step back and be like, hey, in relation to my health, and you know, where do I rate myself right now? Am I a 1 to 5? In relation to like love and relationships, where would I rate myself? And sometimes just the action of doing that will allow you to like really step back and be like, all right, now I know where I can refocus my energy because my check engine light is on something that I might have been ignoring. Like yo, my health is really down. Well, why is that? Because I've been working long hours, because my sleep hasn't been locked in, because I've been on the road. And then you can make appropriate adjustments because what can happen sometimes is we try to get more of the same thing, like it's going to solve our problem, and it may not, because we don't have the awareness of what's really bothering us.
Yeah. I call it like watching film. And one of the things I lean in a lot and when I work with clients is that audit side of things of like, where are you spending your time? Where's your energy? And then this and reflecting enough to understand what your movements are like, because a lot of us move unconsciously through life. We just do what we've always
Hmm.
done because it's just how we always did it. And until we stop, slow down, look around and look back and think, okay, hey, why do you do this, the other thing? That's where the room for adjustment come in. That's where you see where you might be wasting space or where there's an activity that no longer serves you. Talking about the unlearning piece. It's like, okay,
Yep.
man, you do this, but why? Or okay, now you're doing this, but that gets you the outcome that you like. How come you're not doing more of that? Right? Sometimes I lean into that Pareto principle of the 80-20 rule. Well, if this 20% yields 80% of your joy, maybe we should do
100%.
more of that.
100%.
Something about reinventing ourselves. And I know you say like work is a tool, not an identity. But for a lot of people, when they get that title, it becomes their identity, and breaking away from that feels like a form of death. And we've spoken about that concept a lot on the podcast. The old you has to die for the new you to live.
Hmm.
I would say you're like a cat with 9 lives, but you reinvented yourself more than that. What does that look like? How would you encourage someone listening to let go of that identity that they're holding on so dearly and give themselves permission to reset, reinvent?
Yeah. Um, I think it really is about community and proximity. Like, you need to be around people that will help challenge those norms. And one of the steps I recommend anyone take, even if you don't have the community just yet, it's really shifting from more of that fixed mindset, like it's moving from scarcity to a feeling of abundance. And I think that's the hardest for many people, especially those who kind of like climb the ladder to try to achieve. And I use the ladder with intentionality, because your routines about how you think about that, you know, your routine is either a ladder or a leash. So you got to really think about, how am I looking at these things, and how do I start to shift my way of thinking, so that I can attract more abundance in the things that I do. And in my book, when I talk the life work revolution, when I talk about like the process that a person goes through, I feel like there are three revolutions that have to happen for you to get on this other side of what you mentioned, where you're basically, instead of chasing titles, you're chasing freedom and options and abundance. Is that you have to go through an internal revolution, and part of that is understanding the things we talked about, the unlearning your mindset, moving it from fixed to growth. And I think the thing that people don't realize about growth mindset, which is very interesting, is that you can have a growth mindset in one area and have a fixed mindset in another. Like,
Facts.
so you really have to start to like tap on it in every aspect that may be either holding you back, and you can create, and you can find some really amazing unlocks. And then, after going through the internal, I talk about what's your external revolution. It's like, how are you showing up outside? And part of that is, how do you show up at work? How do you look at work, again, shifting it from something that defines you and turning it into a tool. Your work is one of your first investors, because it gives you knowledge, experiences, and stories that you can then take and leverage in other ways. And then last but not least for me is then that community piece too. It's like, what's the revolution in your community? How are you taking care of your tribes and your people? Whether it's your family, whether it's those that you hold close, whether it's your networks, because there is a difference between building a network and networking. This is a very, very distinct thing, for me. And when you think about the mix of those three elements, I think everyone kind of needs to do a little bit in every area, depending on where they are, to help them make that shift that you mentioned, like to get out of their own way. And
Mhm.
sometimes we just need accountability from a coach or a mentor to keep pushing us. Other
Mhm.
times we just need to discover a podcast like this one, or read a book that we double down in, and just really helps our thinking. But at the end of the day, you have to own your actions. And you have to figure out what that spark is, which is why I say proximity is power. Because when you're around people who breathe a little different, or who may be a step or two ahead of you, you start to pick up the pace a little bit.
Yeah, no, I love that, and that accountability piece. I've had a client who I get on the call, and he's like, "Man, I did what we were supposed to do just because I knew you were about to call me."
Hmm.
But the client knew themselves enough that they hired me because they know they wouldn't have done it without someone calling to check in. And it's crazy how sometimes that's all they need is, I just need somebody to call and make sure that I do it.
Yeah.
Because some clients I work with and a lot of business owners I talk to, they run the business, they manage themselves, and no one's taught them how to build that calendar, be strict with themselves, and show up on time. So they legit hire someone to tell them when to be there, what time to be there, and keep them
Yeah.
accountable. And that's the proximity that they hone in on. As someone who's transformed themselves and reinvented themselves more than 10 times across 6 industries, what has been your North Star through those transitions? Has been the consistent direction and
Yeah.
aim as you've made yourself through those, gotten yourself through those industries and transformations?
I think if I could capture it in a sentence, is my goal has been to design a life that I never want to escape from. And what that means for me is that I have radical curiosity about opportunities. So as I find and as I work and partner, I recognize this whole thing that I'm trying to push, this whole idea of life work revolution and life work design. It's bigger than just one place, one company, one sort of like opportunity. And I've always kind of been moved by the idea of either helping an organization or an individual kind of take a step back and say, hey, I didn't look at it that way. Like if they walk away from talking to me and it's like, you know what, I didn't look at it that way, then I feel like I've fulfilled my purpose. And the more that I craft what I do professionally, the more energy it gives me to see that, like, hey, designing your life and using your career as a mechanism to do that, and your work as a mechanism to do that, it's liberating. And I live what I teach. And when I help people create those unlocks, it really for me is about representing what's possible to have a well lived life. And I think about that for my daughters. You know, half the jobs that we are in today, you know, or half the jobs when they're actually out in the world getting jobs won't even exist yet. They don't exist because of the pace of change. And what I want them to feel empowered and exposed to is the idea of you're more than what you do. You're more about who you impact and how you impact them. So
Mm.
that's what's kept me finding and seeking opportunities. It's never been about like shifting because I quote unquote wasn't happy. It's been a shift because either market environments or conditions helped me recognize the signals that I wasn't going to bring my best self to what I was doing, or something was going to de-energize me. So then I
Yeah.
was like, well, how do I leverage my relationships? How do I leverage my experiences? How do I potentially create new and interesting work that keeps
Mm.
me on mission, which is living by example and designing this life that I don't want to escape from, where I have that agency, that autonomy, that flexibility, and that purpose. And it's not about it being perfect, you know? It's never perfect. But when it's purposeful, that's why you get up.
Purpose and progress over perfection, right?
100%. All day, every day, twice on Sunday.
I love that, bro. How long does that transition look like? If someone's listening right now and they're like, "Man, you know what? I want to start crafting my life in that direction. I'm really digging and picking up on this life work design, and I want
Yeah.
to start chasing those opportunities." What does that look like from start to finish if someone hops on a call with you and you start breaking it down to them? What do you think that could look
Yeah.
like?
I think there are probably initial unlocks in as little as 30 days. It just depends on what you're trying to achieve. From a traction perspective, I would say in 3 to 6 months, you're in a place where you are starting to make these fundamental internal shifts, and you've built mindsets, and you have tool sets that will help you life design and work design, because that's the thing. It isn't a destination in of itself, and this is why it's a very lofty, ambitious idea. Because for me, going back to what I said about adaptability and continuous learning, this is about how do you build your toolkit, your utility belt, like Batman. Like, how do you have all the gear in your utility belt, so when something happens, you know what time it is and what tool that you need to have in place. So most of my clients, depending on what their immediate need is, if they're just saying, hey, I need a new job, or I'm trying to figure out an opportunity, something like that can happen, at least in understanding what their core needs are in as little as 30 days. But I would say 90 days, like good focus, good accountability, you're really off to the races in thinking about, you know, I now have tools, and I now know what are the steps that I need to take to start to build my way forward, because that's what it's
Mhm.
all about. It's about like failing fast, learning lessons, and building your way forward.
I met a gentleman literally this past weekend, and he was a, a coder and worked in tech and ended up going on his own, building an app and making money in an app. And I love what he said. He said he's like, man, I'm pretty much retired. And I
Mm,
said, that's it. Because we think of retirement as like, I'm not working anymore. But
yeah,
retirement isn't like, I'm like, my wife will tell you, I'm not the type to sit on my ass when I'm retired. Like, that's not going to be me. Never was, never will be. I always have to be busy. I can't sit the F down, Kason.
hmm,
But for me, doing what I love, the conversation, the dialogue, this is my day to day. I have to wake up and do this. I'm retired every
yeah,
day. Like you said, I don't need a vacation from this. And that's beneficial not just for the person, but for the organization that they work for as well. When your skills and your drive and your purpose are driven with it. Harvard Business Review and Deloitte highlight that skill-based organizations outperform traditional role-based ones, improving agility, internal mobility, and career development. So
absolutely.
agile skills-led structures enhance both performance and employee satisfaction. And that's how we move the needle. So as we come up towards the end of the podcast, one of my last questions is what is the legacy you want your children or our listeners' children to learn from your journey and the example that you've set and given to your clients?
What is the legacy? That's such a powerful question, because what I think of is a lot. It aligns a lot to what you just said. Is that life isn't promised, and each day is truly a gift, and every day that you can spend in it, living in your purpose, is truly a blessing. And when you start to think about what you do and why you do it as a tool for that purpose, then you ultimately achieve that goal that I strive for, designing a life that you never have to escape from. I'm still designing, I'm still building, I'm still learning, and I always will. And we have to lean into that. And the beauty of all this is that when you take on this mindset, you do it on your terms,
Hmm.
versus things happening to you. It's a huge reframe, and that's what I want my daughters and the children that are listening is like. You have more opportunity than you can ever imagine in today's world, even though it's very scary and a lot of social norms are shifting. It When change happens, there's usually a wealth of opportunity for those that do not fear change but lean
Hmm.
into it and embrace it.
I love that. Soak it all up. Where can folks connect with you, follow you, and get more of your work, Kason?
Yeah, for anyone who wants to follow me and learn a little bit more about life work design and see what I do, I have a website, kasonmorris.com. Again, still building, still designing. We'll continue to iterate on that. And then also LinkedIn. I enjoy being in the LinkedIn space. Feel free to follow me. I do live talks there. I post fairly frequently. I also have a newsletter on Substack called LifeWork Dispatch. Behind a couple months, but I will definitely catch up on it because life is life. Progress over perfection.
I'm with you.
So those are the main places that you can catch me. And if you want to read my book or listen to my audiobook, it's Life Work Revolution. You can find that on most major publishing platforms: Amazon, Apple, Kindle, all the places. I feel like I have an update in me coming out sooner than later based on all the work I've been doing.
I love that, man. Hey, keep on version 1, version 2, 3, 4, 5. We keep on going. And I'll have those links in the show notes for folks just to open up the show notes or the description if you're watching on YouTube and get that information to connect right with you. Last question, man. What's usually the heaviest? It's what's something you've seen or something that's happened to you that shapes the way you view the world as a man?
Yeah, that's a good one. What do I see? Well, I'll tell you this. Another big unlock for me was in relation to like why I do what I do is when I hit burnout. And around that time, I was chasing titles, I was chasing dreams, I was chasing ideas. And at the same time, I neglected my relationships at home. And that actually led me to divorce. And when I thought about what that meant for me and what that meant for being a man and being able to provide for a family, it was a very, very powerful driver and a reset for me in relation to like how I continue to stand on business and what it means to be a father and a prototype for my daughters in relation to opposite gender connections. So that's one of the big reasons why I take fatherhood so seriously, and I see the influence of being a dope dad
Yeah.
and allowing them to understand what that means so that they're treated well when they choose to find partnership in life.
Man, I love that. And really quick, forgive me for walking off camera. I, I've never done this before, but I wore the wrong hat today. I should have worn I should have worn the girl dad hat today, man, because I believe that wholeheartedly and I stand by that too. So appreciate you sharing that, brother. Thank you for the time. Powerhouse strategist, speaker, systems thinker, and author behind Life Work Revolution, Kason Morris. Thank you so much for being on the show, brother.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate
Yeah.
it, and keep doing what you do, brother.
Absolutely. I'll keep pushing on it. And really quick, I'm going to share some of the gems and the notes that I took that you shared along the way. Cause a lot of our listeners, they're working out, driving, or cleaning while listening. You left the spot on the kitchen counter, give it one more spray and a wipe. But skills, story, and strategy, right? How do you define yourself? How do you explain yourself? What is your strategy? What is your story? And what are your skills? And the reality of balance is not a reality. Take it from someone who's a meteorologist by trade. Nature does not have balance. As a matter of fact, it's the imbalance in nature that causes the weather and the winds that we enjoy and love so much. It's the waves and the rhythm of nature that we lean into, which again, work isn't the enemy of your life. It's the provider of your life. And when you can flow with those and you have that intuition to understand your skills and strategy, that is where you start to live in your life work design, where your life and your work are compatible together. And you don't have to wake up and find that motivation. You don't have to worry about burnout. The energy is endless when it's aligned. Skills that are durable, not perishable. Identify which ones that are going to be here for a long time, like the hammer. You could build a table, you could build a house. In the right hands, you could build a skyscraper. But if you have groceries and you leave that out, it will spoil it. It might not be the durable skills that will get you from point A to point B. When it comes to reinventing yourself, finding that life work design, your routine could be a ladder, it could be a leash. And if you want to go through that transformation, the revolution internally, external, and in your community, because your community and your proximity is what helps build that life moving forward. Design a life that you never want to escape from. And if you need help, Kason Morris has the map. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for making it to the end. We appreciate you. I'm always going to say this. Make sure you hit that like button. Hit that subscribe button so you can get a new episode each and every single week. Share this with someone you know can get value from it too. Maybe you know somebody that needs to start designing their life a little better. Send them this clip, send them this episode. And of course, you know what I'm going to ask. Leave us a rating. Let us know how we're doing. An honest rating is all I ask. I could take it. I have thick skin, or if we're crushing it, let us know as well. It's the only way we can get better. And as I always say at the end of the episode, everybody wants the sunshine, but they don't want the rain. But you can't get the pleasure without first the pain. Let's grow.